Hello everybody, it is me, the Alec Powers. Recently, I uploaded a video called The Horror of Nuclear War, Threads 1984 video essay, in which I gave my thoughts on the movie Threads, a film about a nuclear bomb detonating in 1980s England. In that video, I mentioned another movie that I really like called 28 Days Later, which is a more well-known movie, and it's a quote-unquote zombie movie that released in 2002, directed by Danny Boyle. The first time I saw this movie was such an experience. Its tone is so expertly crafted. It's one of those movies that transports you into another reality without you even realizing it. You're sitting there watching, soaking in the atmosphere and feeling the characters, and only when it's over do you snap out of the trance and remember that you weren't just in another world. You're actually on your couch, sitting on your ass, wasting your life watching movies and making videos about them. Anyway, my point is that the movie is very well crafted, and it really sells you on its world and characters. If you haven't seen it, I recommend watching it before this video, but either way, here are 14 things I love about the movie 28 Days Later, along with a few things I don't. This isn't a review really, it's more of a love letter / discussion, and I'd be happy to hear what you think about this film down in the comments. Let's go. Number one is just the virus itself, and the infected and how they operate. When this movie released in 2002, there hadn't been many depictions of fast zombies. I haven't personally seen 1968's Night of the Living Dead, but I've been told by random people online that there are some fast zombies in it, along with a few other films that came out before 2002. But it's my understanding that 28 Days Later at least popularized fast zombies, something that we later saw again in things like 2013's World War Z and the video game The Last of Us. The reason I said zombie movie in quotations earlier, though, is because technically the zombies in this film aren't actually zombies. They're just infected people who are uncontrollably, violently angry. Future Alec here. I'm going to be saying zombie a lot anyway. If they sense that a human is nearby, they will full-on rush them without stopping to catch their breath, pin that human down, and just tear them apart, all while projectile vomiting infected blood all over them. Another factor with these zombies is that if you get infected, you turn fast. You literally have like 20 seconds to say your goodbyes if you get bitten or vomited on. All of these factors culminate in a way that makes this particular zombie outbreak stand out in my mind among all others. Speed is the name of the game. The virus spreads quickly, the infected move quickly, and if you're bitten, your friends have to kill you quickly to save themselves. For number two, we have our main character's first appearance in the movie. If you've seen the TV show The Walking Dead, this scene may look familiar to you. The first time we see Jim, he is naked, lying on a hospital bed. It's been 28 days since the infection started spreading, and he's been in a coma during all of them. When he wakes up, he is obviously very scared and confused, finding himself in a completely abandoned London. We see him walking around, trying to figure out his situation, and watching him, you get the sense that the psychological mess going on in his head must be so disarming. He sees headlines about evacuations, posters of missing people, etc. He also finds some loose money on the ground, which he picks up. I love this little detail because it shows how ignorant Jim is of his situation at this point in the film. The world he has woken up in has no use for money, but how is he supposed to know that? All he understands is that something weird is going on, and for all he knows, this cash will come in handy. My favorite part of this whole sequence is when Jim enters a church. Maybe he's looking for people, maybe he's looking for spiritual guidance, some hope, but that's not what he finds at all. What Jim finds instead is a massive pile of bodies. He calls out with a hello, desperately hoping that somebody will answer him, not realizing that that is a horrible idea. And when he does, this happens.
Hello?
It may be your first instinct to laugh at these silly faces the zombies are making, but think about what's behind their expressions. They aren't making these faces to be funny, they're making them because they are raving mad. Almost all of their humanity is gone, and they are staring at Jim like he's prey, totally fixated on him. This one in particular is very unsettling to me. The way his mouth hangs open and he just seems so focused on Jim, like his only purpose in life is to catch him and brutally murder him. That's what this virus turns people into, and Jim's opening scene portrays perfectly the confusing, horrifying mess that he has found himself in. For number three, I really like that this movie commits to being serious. It doesn't feel the need to break up the tension with one-liners or goofy characters, at least for the most part. There are a few instances of this, most notably the scene where Jim gets rescued by Mark and Selena, and Mark immediately tells Jim a joke about a giraffe. I don't mind this too much though, as it does characterize Mark a little, and therefore serves a purpose beyond just being funny. There's also the scene later on in the movie where the characters happen upon a fully stocked grocery store and for the first time in a while get to put the outbreak out of their minds and just enjoy themselves, shopping around and laughing. There are a few other scenes like this where the characters have like more of a lighthearted fun time and just sort of forget about the outbreak for a little while. And my point is, these kinds of moments are used sparingly and purposefully. Instead of ruining the tone of the movie, they serve as reminders that even though these people are in a dire reality now, they are still people who crave connection and happiness. And it's nice to see a film that knows when to play this card and when not to. Okay, this scene is fucking sad. Jim convinces Selena and Mark to take him to his parents' house, and in their minds, this isn't so he can find them, but so that he can find closure and accept that they're dead. They are convinced that Jim isn't going to find them alive, but he doesn't want to believe it, and he has to see it for himself. Well, Mark and Selena were right, and upon entering his parents' bedroom, Jim sees them lying dead on their bed, a bottle of sleeping pills next to them. For me, the saddest part of this scene is the note that Jim's parents left for him. Remember that Jim was in a coma when this note was written. That final line just kills me. In times of normalcy, parents want nothing more than for their kids to live long and happy lives, but the situation that these people have found themselves in is so horrific that they would rather their son die in his sleep than wake up and have to face it. This film conveys this complex, paradoxical feeling to the viewer in 3 words. Don't wake up. Shortly after the note scene, we have one of Jim, Mark, and Selena sitting down together and talking about their dead loved ones. Jim is obviously upset about his parents dying, but Selena tells him that he should be grateful that they had the chance to kill themselves instead of getting infected. Jim doesn't want to hear it, but Mark makes sure that the point gets driven home by telling Jim about his family. He tells Jim that during the initial outbreak, he and his family tried to buy their way onto a plane, but that thousands of other people had the same idea and their cash was useless. They were in a huge crowd of people, and some of them were infected. It spread fast, and soon he found himself walking on people like a carpet, and eventually climbing over piles of them as the crowd surged and surged. He then managed to climb on top of a kiosk and look down, and he describes what he saw up there to Jim. He says,
"Looking down, you couldn't tell which faces were infected and which weren't. And I saw my dad, not my mum or my sister, my dad. His face."
This dialogue is so well written and so well acted that he doesn't have to say, "That was the last time I ever saw my sister and mom." We know this already from the fact that he brushes over them and emphasizes seeing his dad. He doesn't describe what his dad's face looked like, and this fact alone tells the viewer that whatever it did look like was too horrible for Mark to want to talk about it, which leaves it to the viewer's imagination. This whole monologue does that, actually. Instead of showing all of this stuff, the surging crowd, the piles of people being trampled, the faces of the infected, we simply hear Mark describe it, leaving us to imagine just how horrible it all must have been. I think this was a great choice on the part of the filmmakers, and this scene really drove home to me how dangerous this infection is and how quickly it can take away the people you love. Speaking of people being taken away quickly, number 6 is Mark's death scene. This too takes place in Jim's house, and it starts with an infected person bursting through the door because it saw the light of a candle. Jim wasn't making noise, he wasn't looking out the window, he simply lit a candle. That's how easy it is to attract these ravenous, infected monsters. Anyway, the zombie bursts in and they have a struggle, and it results in Mark being probably infected. I'm not sure if he was bitten or if he simply got cut and some infected blood got in, but either way, you can kind of see it on his face that he knows he's screwed. When Selena sees this, she wastes no time bringing her machete down on him, chopping him up and killing him on the spot, right in front of Jim. Seriously, as soon as she suspects that he's infected, she puts him down, virtually no hesitation. Personally, I'm not fully convinced that he was infected. Sure, his face looked worried, but like I said before, it could have just been a cut and not a bite, and we didn't actually see any infected blood touch it. I would have waited for him to twitch or something at least once before I killed him, but hey, maybe I'd have ended up dead if I did that. Selena even admits later on that she didn't know for sure that he was infected, but she wasn't willing to chance it. Not only does this scene drive home yet again how quickly the virus can take someone away, it also characterizes Selena as a no-nonsense survivor who will not hesitate to kill someone she thinks is infected. She even tells Jim that she'd do the same to him in a heartbeat if she had to, which is a line that I will mention again later. Number 7, I love the dialogue in this movie. A lot of it is very realistic and well acted, such as the scene I mentioned earlier with Mark talking about his family, and there are a few other examples I'd like to mention too. When, in Jim's house, the zombie bursts in because of the candlelight, it jumps on top of Jim. When Mark runs in to help, he yells one thing. Fight! Fight! I love this because it's exactly what Jim needs to hear in this moment, and Mark, being used to this kind of thing by now, knows that. Jim is being pinned down by an infected, and he has moments to act in a way that won't get him killed. This has all happened so suddenly, and his thoughts are likely very jumbled, but Mark's fight, fight is just the thing he needs to center himself and focus on his immediate survival. I wager that if Mark hadn't shouted this out, Jim may have taken too long to gather himself in this scene, and would have ended up dying, even with Mark and Selena killing the infected person. I think it would have infected Jim before they killed it had Mark not given him clarity in that moment. There are plenty of other examples in this movie of well-written and well-acted dialogue, such as the exchange about sleeping arrangements between Frank and Jim while Jim is shaving.
It's fine. Right. I know, I mean, yeah. Yeah, so, right. Okay, good night then anyway. Yeah, good night, Frank.
By the way, Frank is a man who lives in a high-rise with his daughter Hannah, and Selena and Jim team up with them. I made this video for people who have seen the movie mostly, but I know some people who haven't are probably going to watch it, so that's who Frank is. And another example is the exchange on the stairs between Jim and Selena about Jim being fatigued. Specifically his line, "Well, because I didn't think you'd give a shit," when Selena asks why he didn't tell her he had a headache.
Well, why didn't you say something before?
Well, because I didn't think you'd give a shit.
You've got no fat on you.
She doesn't even respond to this. She knows she comes off as someone who doesn't give a shit about other people, and she can't even deny it. This movie is full of great dialogue like this that characterizes its characters very well. Frank's infection and subsequent death is definitely a standout scene for me. Aside from Mark talking about his family and Jim finding his parents' note, it is the saddest part of the whole film in my opinion. And it's all in the specific way that it goes down. In this scene, Frank, Hannah, Jim, and Selena have just arrived to a place they were expecting to find soldiers with a safe haven, but instead there is no one. Frank is taking this pretty hard and ends up sulking by himself for a moment, and while doing this, he enters a building and decides to check out the ceiling. Well, unbeknownst to him, there was a dead body like up in the rafters or whatever. Hey gang, Future Alec here. I just rewatched this scene and I totally forgot that the reason he was even looking at the ceiling in the first place is because there was a bird up there that was annoying him. And he sort of kicks the wall to get it to shut up, and then a single drop of blood drips down off of it and lands precisely right into his eye, infecting him. He doesn't get ambushed, pinned down, and vomited on. All he does is look up, something that anyone could nonchalantly do. He was a victim of extremely bad luck, and in a matter of moments, he loses everything, and so does his daughter. The only silver lining to this scene is that after he gets infected, this prompts the soldiers who were in hiding to come out and put him down, meaning that even though they lost Frank, Selena, Jim, and Hannah do end up finding the soldiers. I'm sure they wouldn't have made this trade had they been offered, though. Either way, this scene yet again drives home just how quickly this virus takes people away, and how easy it is to get infected. This scene sticks out to me for a number of reasons. First off, it can only ever exist in a movie like this, at least in the exact form it takes. Let me explain what I mean by that. The scene goes down like this. Selena and Hannah are being held hostage by one of the soldiers in a room, and Jim drops down from a window to save them. He does this by brutally beating and killing the soldier, going so far as to push his thumbs deep into the man's eye sockets, which is obviously a very violent death to inflict upon someone. Seeing this, Selena thinks that Jim may be infected with the rage virus and grabs her machete, ready to put him down. When I saw this for the first time, I was floored. I love this. And the reason I say it can only exist in a movie like this harkens back to the fact that the creatures in this film aren't zombies, they are uncontrollably furious, infected people. If this was any other zombie movie and Jim killed this man by pushing his thumbs into his eyes, Selena would have instantly known that he wasn't infected due to the fact that a zombie would have killed the man using its teeth. In this movie, however, an infected person would totally kill someone like this, causing Selena to think he might be infected. I love that they included this in the movie. Also, I love that it highlights the fact that even normal people can do monstrous things, because rage is a normal emotion that everyone feels from time to time. Jim had to tap into that feeling and become a monster to save his friends. The second reason that this scene stands out to me harkens back to what Selena said to Jim earlier after killing Mark. The whole, "I'd do it to you in a heartbeat if I had to." When Jim is standing in front of Selena after killing the soldier, Selena hesitates to kill him, which obviously is a good thing given that he isn't actually infected, but if he was infected, he probably would have had the chance to kill her. But because she hesitates, Jim hits her with a, "That was longer than a heartbeat." In this moment, you see that Selena actually does care about Jim, so much that she would risk getting infected to keep him alive. This is a big character moment for her and essentially ends her arc. It shows us a new Selena, one that is willing to be attached to others and admit that love is still important even though the world is being ravaged by this virus. In this moment, you get the sense that if they make it out of there alive, Selena will no longer be quite as held back by her idea that the world is completely fucked and that staying alive is as good as it gets. Future Alec here. I just want to let you know that the rest of the video is unscripted. And I don't know, just like pay attention to how that is different from what you've been watching up to this point. And just like let me know in the comments if whether or not you like more scripted stuff or more just, unscripted stuff. Number 10 is Christopher Eccleston. I really like him, and the first time I ever saw him was in Doctor Who, but I know he's been in a number of other things. I'm really glad that he was in this movie. He did a good job. And it's kind of fun to watch the movie and imagine that he is still the Doctor and that he's like stuck here and he's decided to become the commander of these soldiers, and I'm glad he's in the movie. Number 11 is the soundtrack. I love the soundtrack in this movie. Really, I'm only going to talk about the two songs that stand out to me that I remember. There's In the House in a Heartbeat by John Murphy. This is like the theme song, if you will, of the movie. It's the song that plays. I'm actually not sure. I can't think right now in this moment of when it plays in the movie. I'm pretty sure it plays at the end during the soldier scene, like when everything's going down at the base. I'm pretty sure it plays then. But I can't think of any other times during the movie that it actually plays. It also plays, I know for sure it plays in the sequel, in the opening scene of the sequel, which is awesome, by the way. I might talk about that at some point. I doubt I'll make a whole video on the sequel, but the opening scene is great, and it's directed by the same person who directed this movie. But the other song that really sticks out to me in this movie is the scene, like the opening scene I talked about earlier, where Jim is walking around in abandoned London. Just the song that plays like while he's realizing he doesn't find out what happened in that scene, but things are just slowly getting more and more crazy around him, and he's seeing all these signs that something really bad happened, and just the psychological roller coaster that must be going on in his mind was really well represented by the song that's playing in the background. It's called East Hastings by Godspeed You, Black Emperor. Another thing I really like about this movie is actually only something that I know about because I bought the DVD. It's the alternate endings. The DVD has all these alternate endings. Like there's one where Jim actually ends up dying from getting shot by Christopher Eccleston. And there's another alternate ending. I forget what the other one is, but there's three of them on the DVD. There's one where Jim dies, one that I can't remember what happens in that one. But the third one is like I'm just gonna try to summarize it right now from memory. I believe Jim, Selena, and Hannah go to like some sort of research facility, and there's this doctor there who was like, "Oh yeah, you came here looking for the answer to infection, huh?" And well, it's here, but you're not gonna like it. And he basically tells them that in order to cure infection, they have to do a full blood transfusion. And actually, now that I'm saying this, I think they actually brought Frank with them because he was infected, and they do a blood transfusion on him, and Jim actually gives up all of his blood for Frank to save Frank's life. I believe that's how it happened. If you really want to know, you should just get the DVD. You should buy the DVD. I'm telling you now. I remember from the commentary they were like, "Oh yeah, the reason that we didn't go with this ending is because we already established that all it takes is a drop of blood, and like it only takes one drop of blood getting it in you to get you infected, so it really wouldn't make sense that a blood transfusion would cure you, because you would have to get literally every single drop of blood and like scrape the insides of the veins to get every little bit, or else it wouldn't work. So that's why they didn't end up going with the blood transfusion ending. And I think it's a good move that they didn't go with that, but it's fun to hear about. Number 13 is the camera quality. I don't know, like, if you've seen this movie, you know what I'm talking about. The camera quality, like I believe, like it's my understanding that they purposefully used poor quality cameras, like or at least cameras that weren't state of the art in 2002, and they did this so that it would have like a certain look to it. It is true. Like, I'm glad that they did this, and I really like this, and that's why I included it as one of my 14. Like, sometimes when things are in HD, they just aren't quite as scary, you know, like back in point number 1, I believe it was, like when I was talking about the virus and the zombie. No, I think it was point number 2, Jim's opening scene when he goes into the church. There's that zombie that looks back at him, and he just has that gaping mouth and those eyes. I think part of the reason that that particular zombie's face scares me so much is because of the low quality. Like, I think if it was HD and I could see every little detail on his face, then it wouldn't be quite as scary. Like, it goes back to them leaving things to your imagination, you know, like when Mark was talking about his family, he didn't describe every little thing he saw in immaculate detail. Like, he left a lot to your imagination, and it made it that much scarier. And I think them using lower quality cameras for the movie really adds to that, because it leaves more to your imagination. You know, you don't need to see every little detail in every scene. I think it would have taken away from the movie, and I'm glad that they made that choice. Number 14, I'll admit, I originally included number 14 in my things that I don't like about 28 Days Later, but I do like some things about it. It's sort of an iffy thing for me, and the reason I included it as number 14 is so I can say is so I could say 14 things instead of 13 things, because it's just like that's half of 28. But anyway, number 14 is the weird dialogue. Like, I know I praised the dialogue before, but I don't know if you noticed in that section I said a lot of the dialogue is well acted and a lot of the dialogue is well written. Not all of it. There are a few times in the movie where I'm like, huh, that sounded weird. Like, pretty much Hannah, pretty much everything she says is very, I don't know, I don't want to say that she's a bad actress or anything, but it's just something about her delivery is just, it's almost like monotone in a way. Like, it's just kind of weird.
What have we got to offer?
We've got Mum's creme de menthe. And anyway, it isn't true what Dad said. You need us just the same as we need you.
She sounds almost high the whole time, and it's actually kind of ironic because at the end of the movie, she is given some sort of pill that makes her high, and she actually plays a high character really, really well.
Don't worry, I feel fine, really.
So it might be fun to see her in some kind of stoner movie, but it wasn't bad. I actually really enjoyed her performance. It was just kind of goofy at times. Speaking of weird dialogue, there's this one particular part where they go into a tunnel and they're changing a tire, and all these zombies are running up on them. And then Jim says something like, "They're coming, I'll play it here in a second."
I can see them, they're coming! Ah!
He's like, they're coming, and it's just the way he delivers that particular line really sticks with me. I like it and I don't like it because it sounds really weird, but on the other hand, I mean, things sound weird all the time in real life. You know, you'll say something and it just sounds weird. So I don't want to say it's unrealistic. It just kind of shook me a little bit when I saw that. I'm like, oh, that sounded weird. But anyway, that's the 14 things that I like about 28 Days Later. Future Alec here. I just wanted to mention that the cinematography is also really awesome, and for some reason I forgot to mention that, but yeah, it is. And I do want to mention a few things that I don't like about 28 Days Later. First of all, the pacing. I don't know. The first time I watched the movie, I really didn't notice any pacing issues because it really sucked me in and I really enjoyed it and everything. But I don't know, like, I think it's like the third time I watched it, I noticed I was like, damn, this is kind of dragging. And I don't really want to call it like a major issue or anything because, like I said, the first time I watched it, it didn't even register that it was slow pacing. But I don't know, just on my third watch, I was like, oh man, they're really dragging out these scenes. So it can feel a bit slow sometimes, but like I said, it's not really that big of a deal. The second thing I don't like is the tunnel scene. Actually, the tunnel scene as a whole seemed a little contrived, like artificial conflict. Like Frank was driving the car and they could either take the long way above ground or the short way in a tunnel. And he chose to go in the tunnel. And I just think, like, I don't know, like in this world where it took 28 days for, I mean, at this point in the movie, they believe that the entire world is fucked. And it, like, so as far as they believe, the entire world has been decimated in 28 days by this super dangerous, super infectious virus. And they're like, let's take the short way in the dark tunnel. It's like, I don't know, I feel like they would be more careful than that in real life. I certainly would take the long way, above ground. It ends up with them having that flat tire in the tunnel and everything, and then the zombies run up on them, and it's like this heightened scene with like a bunch of tension and everything. But I don't know, it's a cool scene and everything, but it's just like kind of like contrived. Like they only did it so that they could have a little tense scene. But I will say, Jim points out that it is stupid to go in the tunnel. He's like, this is a really stupid idea, and you know why? Because it's a really obviously stupid idea. And it's like, okay, he said exactly what I was thinking. Like, at least somebody there understands that what they're doing is stupid. I guess it's just Frank that made the shitty choice. He was driving. The last thing I want to talk about is something that I think they could have done better on. I don't know what their budget was. Maybe they kind of had to use these sound effects, but some of the sound effects they use for the zombies are just so overdone. Like, I realized it was 2002 and maybe they weren't quite as overdone at the time, but it didn't age well, I'll say. Like, some of the screaming sound effects that they use are just like, I don't know, it's like stock scream #1. It kind of took me out of the movie and broke my immersion a little bit. But anyway, not to end on a sour note, I do want to, harken back and be like, remember, I love this movie. I do really, really like this movie. And I hope that you take that away from this video, because the things that I don't like about this movie are so small and insignificant that they barely even warrant being mentioned. But, overall, this is a great movie. Like I said, the tone is great, the acting is great for the most part, the virus itself is such a cool concept. I really, really like this movie. There's so many things about it that I think they did perfectly well. And I would recommend it to anybody who's into horror films or zombie films or anything like that. I don't know what movie my next video will be about. Feel free to recommend something in the comments. And I just want to thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then leave a like and subscribe, because, I'll probably be making more videos like this in the future. So thank you so much, and watch 28 Days Later, and the sequel, 28 Weeks Later. Alright.